Hello, filmmakers, and welcome to the Wedding Film School Show, a podcast dedicated to the craft, business, and personal aspect of running a wedding film brand. The Wedding Film School Show is hosted by myself, Jared Haskell, and my longtime business partner, Jason McCutcheon. If you're looking for free resources or to get your wedding film business off the ground, make sure to check out weddingfilm.school or check us out on Instagram for news, giveaways, and more. Jason, today we're going to talk about a topic that we haven't talked about, and I'm really interested to see where this goes because I think it's a topic that actually we have a lot of experience in now, and that's talking about the low end and also high end of wedding filmmaking. Can you tell us maybe talk a little bit about us, talking about John Mayer, talking about himself, talk a little bit about us and why we think it's something that we have a little bit of experience in.
So we have, a lot of people know this, but if you're new to the podcast, you don't know who Jared and I are. We run a business together, a corporation, an S Corp, and we have multiple brands and DBAs under our business. Our actual name of our business is actually called High Sales Media. That's the actual name of our business. SAILS, not SALES. I don't know why we came up with that, but we did.
Ships are cool.
Well, and also I think we're thinking we're going to help you when the winds are low, because we were more of a marketing company when we first wanted to start. So
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. So we have three brands: Merriment Films, Stop Go Love, and Huxley Film. And the first one we started was Stop Go Love. And Stop Go Love kind of found itself kind of naturally placing itself into mid-tier to high-end weddings in New England because there wasn't a lot of people doing what we do. It's just, we've said before, just by nature, a luxury, wedding filmmaking. And we had that brand for a long time, and of it, we grew teams. Still sick, by the way, people. And eventually, one thing leads to another, and the weddings get bigger and bigger because some of our planners grow as planners. They start to get better and better weddings. And I think our market kind of grew. I think what is expected of a New England wedding has expanded since we started. I don't remember seeing the types of weddings that I'm seeing now in New England all the time, but now we're shooting 6 in a weekend a lot of times. And there's just more good planners and florists and big weddings that I can count, right? And eventually people were like, well, two things happened, I think. And you could maybe speak towards this on the sales side, but do you kind of remember when people would call us and when we started hearing oh, you're too expensive?
Do I remember? I feel like it was the first year we started. Because you're always too expensive for somebody.
That's
right?
true.
So I don't think that's anything new, really.
But I wonder, I'm just
specifically,
wondering,
what were you thinking?
Well, when the saturation point hit, that we were oh, there's a lot of these people, and we're just leaving money on the table.
Mm-hmm.
At some point that occurred to us. Probably when we grew our teams to a certain point. We had two things that happened for us. One of them was a lot of people wanted our services but couldn't afford it, and the other one was a lot of our filmmakers that we were training. They weren't quite ready for the way that we covered weddings with Stop Go Love, the level of everything that goes into it from customer side to the shooting side, but they could cover a wedding. They just needed maybe some lower stakes weddings to really mature as filmmakers. And so we were we have these people and we have customers for them. So we said, we're going to start Merriment Films. And we were targeting I think initially we were $19.99. And then also at this kind of a similar time, people would come to us and we were working with more wedding planners with Stop Go Love, and they would be like, oh, but can you come, Jason, or can you come, Jared? And we were like, no, we can't do that. We don't do that. That's not what we do. We're a studio. And I think we were kind of well, what if we did? And I don't really know, maybe some ego driven stuff. We were I don't want people. Okay. I remember the first Vision Quest, some idiot guy. I honestly don't even remember his name. I think he's out of wedding filmmaking. And I remember him calling me a wedding mill. We were launching Huxley at that point. Like we're in the middle of launching it. But that just kind of like lit a fire under my butt because it's like, I want to do volume, but I also want to be considered one of the best in the world at what I do. And I feel like that like competitive drive is what drove Huxley Film. It's like we want to have something for that audience, which is like the wedding planners and the more high-end weddings. Like we're leaving money on the table there. We're leaving money on the table with these more budget conscious couples. And we have filmmakers that we want to develop. And then we also want to make cool films.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of scratching all the itches at the same time. Yeah. So just to recap, Merrimet Films, price range anywhere from 2,000 to 3,500, solid market. Stop Go Love, anywhere from 5,000 to 11,000. Huxley Films, starting at 12,000, going upward, right? Those are kind of like our pricing tiers. So why this is helpful and why I think this episode would be helpful for someone is to just understand, like, we understand what you're going through. I'll deal with a high-end client billionaire, be talking to him in one email. In the very next email, I'm talking to a person who spent $2,000 who wants a refund because we didn't capture her second cousin at the cocktail hour. And these annoying types of scenarios like that.
Yeah.
Not this. I don't want to isolate specific people in case they listen to this podcast, but just so you understand what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
And the sales side.
And the sales side and selling weddings and understanding what brides are looking for in each, brides and grooms are dealing with.
Can we just call them brooms from now on?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
What brooms are looking for.
And so, we want to talk, and what I hope is helpful in this episode is if you're, would consider yourself, a low end videographer, maybe you're just starting out, maybe you feel like you're kind of hitting a certain threshold where you want to raise prices, but you don't know how. Hopefully this will be helpful in understanding your clientele and what you can do in your films, in your business to be able to elevate, right? Like that's really what we want to talk about.
Well, and also just from a curiosity standpoint is like, what is the difference in the films that you can make?
Hey guys, Bobby popping in quick to let you know that this episode of the podcast was brought to you by Tamron. Providing filmmakers with the perfect mix of performance and value, Tamron has every type of lens to fit your needs. With their moisture-resistant construction, close focusing abilities, 6-year warranty, and remarkable optical performance, Tamron lenses can help you upgrade your wedding films. I know I personally keep the 28-75 2.8 in my bag, and I often reach for it on a wedding day. So send them some love for making this episode possible. Check out some of their lens options in our gear link below or at www.tamron-americas.com.
The other part of it is I can look at someone's film and I typically know what they're charging based on what the content of the film.
Right. So let's dive in right there, because I think that's actually a good place to start. I was just actually going to ask you the same thing, is like, what separates a lower end person maybe charging $2,000, $2,500 from a person charging $20,000 to $25,000 for a wedding film immediately, right?
Well,
off the
what
bat?
separates them in skills wise, or what separates the content they're capturing?
How can you tell the difference?
How can you tell the difference?
Because I think this is going to answer, a lot of people are going to say this, right? They're going to say, oh, well, that's a nicer venue. And that's it. Though, of course, they're, doing better work. They're at the Ritz-Carlton or they're at the Breakers or whatever it is.
That's true.
But what is it immediately that you can tell the difference between?
Well, just to lean into that, yes. The first thing you're going to see is like florals. The difference in florals between if I'm selling a $2,500 film versus a $17,000 film, florals are the first thing, and location and fashion and all that. And I think that's not nothing. That you have that advantage, right? When you're a wedding filmmaker, that it's easier to get beautiful stuff. Now, the thing about it is that I think people maybe discount is like, you could say what you said, like, oh, it's easy for them. They're shooting this great place, but it's like, they weren't always shooting there. So they had to do something to elevate and to get into that space. So I think like making the most of whatever it is that's at the wedding that you're shooting is really what I'm trying to emphasize. Is like, And I can tell. So I would say like the biggest thing, like I said, is florals. I think, man, maybe we should break it into two categories, Jared. One of them is the content of the film, and one of them is the quality of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Because I think the content of the film is people are different too at that part of the market. Like families function differently. There's way less of like these rich people are all about like legacy family stuff. Like if you're with rich people, like they're less about like these, like if I see a film with like tons and tons and tons of couples portraits, it immediately makes me think it's not luxury. Because I'm like, it, like fashion, I think is a big tell. What people are wearing at the weddings, how religious it is. I hate to say it, but like you're much more dealing with evangelical Christians. Like I can't remember at a high-end wedding the last time I've heard Jesus. Right? If they talk about Jesus, I'm thinking, oh, they just knocked $500,000 off the price tag. Young couples is another thing that I see. If the couples are young, that to me is a big tell. Like these are the things you see in low-end weddings and then what they do at their weddings, like they're much more likely to do things that other people would consider to be passé.
The first look where they're around the corner and they're holding hands and they're reading something to each other or something.
No, even worse. Like they'll do stuff like the dollar game.
DJ games.
DJ games is what I mean.
DJ games.
They play like I'm not ripping on it at all. I'm just saying like when is the last time you saw a garter toss? At a wedding
Low-end weddings.
Huh?
Low-end weddings.
But for you, like you're shooting not low-end weddings, right? When's the last time you physically saw a garter toss?
It's been years.
I cannot remember.
Been years.
I cannot remember
Maybe
the last time.
Maybe even pre-COVID, dude.
I think pre-COVID.
It's gone. Yeah.
And now I don't think they're gone from...
Unfortunately.
I don't think they're gone from weddings. They're just gone from our weddings.
Sure.
Because like for instance, like cake cuttings being in the middle of the room. That's a low-end wedding thing. Everyone, look at the cake cutting. And then everyone comes around and watches. Like, you don't see that at high-end events anymore. Every person, they think they're having a unique conversation with you. We're just going to really have like a low-key cake cutting. It's like you and every single person I've shot this year. Like, I know what we're going to do. Planner's going to go, we're going to cut the cake.
Good trends.
It's all good.
Yep.
It's all good. But it's like the high-end wedding, it's much more efficient. They don't do things that are actually like, they're just way more able to like be like, we don't care about this. We don't care about this. We don't care about that.
High-end markets run by planners. Low-end markets are run by the mother-in-law, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think you see that in the film.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right. The one that stood out to me probably the most out of all that, well, maybe not the most, but the age of the couple. And, it sucks because these are all things that, frankly, you can't control. You could get into a conversation about like, well, you control like the quality of your films, you work your way up. But when you're first starting, these aren't the things that you can control. But it is something that you can be aware of if you're trying to elevate that rich people will think about when they're watching your film. These little tells that I think when we first started, I didn't know these were all like a language that was speaking to the kind of clients that I wanted to hire. But it is. And that's the way you need to think of it as a wedding filmmaker.
Well, and this is why
in this category.
With our experience, right? When we first wanted to start Merriment, we were thinking just very practical, like this is what we can make and make money on and do it cheaply. And it was very like Spartan in terms of like what we were delivering. I think we were doing like a 4-minute video, no audio. And then like one camera of ceremony, right?
One camera angle, single camera angle on a tripod. That is your ceremony. That's what we're delivering. Yep.
But what we found out is that market doesn't value the montage film as, I should say, they really wanted. They'd be like, oh yeah, that's good, but also can I have all the things like the ceremonies was important to them. The speeches and all that stuff was important to them. I mean, it's important to a lot of people, but like we had gotten so used to So many of our couples in Stop Go Love will literally be like, I don't care about that. Like, I don't want that ceremony. I don't care about that. Basically, like, we thought that was the norm, but it was really like our clientele. And once we went into that lower end of the market and we were starting to talk to those couples, they had totally different products that they wanted. Like what they were wanting out of wedding filmmaking was, so we've had to revamp the product. We have to raise the price a little actually, because we were having to give them much more of those like moments on their wedding day that are just traditional. They're just much more traditional. They're much more like not into themselves. They're much more not to say the other people are into themselves, but you know what I'm saying?
I think when you raise your price, people are generally going to be a little bit more in the know as to what the current trends are, which are highlight films. People that are just like getting married, they don't follow Instagram accounts that are bridal Instagram accounts. They don't follow trends.
They're in a bridal Facebook group.
They're going to say, I want a video. And what they mean is they want their ceremony and toast. And then they're learning, oh, this is a new montage-y thing. I like that. But like, I came here for the one thing. I came here to just get my ceremony and have the guy with the vest show up and film on his DV camera. I'm learning that that's not how things are at all anymore. I can't even find that guy anywhere. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. And I think, that's changing a little bit because there are plenty of brides in this world that, are on Instagram and they want the highlight film specifically.
Sure.
But we're seeing a little bit more of that type of person with our married couples, for sure. So
they're much like they want that stuff more than I think our other couples want that stuff.
Sure.
The reason they're getting married is different sometimes. Like a lot of them are like, I'm 24 years old. I'm passionately in love and I want to get married. And it's not to say that the other people aren't passionately in love, but they're passionate in love. That's why they bought a house together.
Right.
They're getting married for other reasons. Like the actual ceremony of the wedding is not the same for wealthy people.
I think it's not a secret that wealthy people, it's important that they maintain a certain level of status, right? So it might be a little bit more of a vanity purchase for them where they're like, I have to get this to show off our family and how awesome we are. And like,
or I have to get married because if I don't, all my assets are going to be threatened.
Right.
Like,
I
have all this property and I have all this, like, it's like why people are getting married at different levels of the market really varies. And if you don't understand that these dynamics are different, you're not going to understand how to make the films that are going to meet their needs and make them happy.
Right. The other thing too, which I think is kind of wound up in the conversation that you're having is, people in this market want value. So they want the toy with their Happy Meal. They just want to bundle things a little bit more. And also, you're expensive for them. So,
oh yeah, $2,000 is like really expensive. They never would have even imagined you costing $2,000.
Yeah, they're like, we're spending $2,000 and getting just raw footage. Yeah.
It's only 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's only 4 minutes. Can you make it 2 hours instead?
That's why they want that stuff.
Yeah.
That's why they care about the ceremony. It's not just that they are sentimental. It's they don't understand. They're like, well, I'm dropping $2,000. I should get a lot of video.
Yep.
And so
and they haven't made a luxury purchase before. They haven't made a emotional purchase like that before, which is just like, I want it because I want it. And I'm only getting married once. Like that's a hard decision to make. And maybe they're introduced for that. I guarantee most guys in this, tier, the first big purchase they ever made was on an engagement ring, which is like thousands of dollars, right? Like that's a big purchase. Especially like you're saying, if they're younger, they saved up for years maybe for that ring. And now they're going to have to put all this other stuff on a credit card. And like,
if you spent $2,000 on your engagement ring, you're not going to feel great dropping $2,500 on a wedding film.
No, exactly. So, just trying to understand this world. And
I did a wedding the other day where the bride was wearing a $350,000 wedding ring.
Yeah.
Or no, $450,000. The wedding cost $350,000 and the ring was $450,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was from her grandma passed down, so it wasn't like they bought it, but it was like, but again, that's what you're dealing with.
Seems like there's a little bit of Trump math going into that, evaluating
piece
of jewelry.
This thing was.
Yeah, but it's not about size at that point. You can buy. I don't know much about jewelry.
and purity and all that junk.
yeah.
It had been appraised for 450 is my point.
Okay, yeah.
So it was like, when you look at stuff, you're just like, it's a totally different group of people. And of course the film's going to look different.
Yeah.
Now from a skill standpoint, because I think there are things you can do that makes your film look cheaper or better,
Yes.
no matter what you're shooting.
Yes. And this is the area that if you're a filmmaker, the things that you can change to make your films look better tomorrow, right? You can't necessarily change the fact that you're booked up with 20 weddings that are in this kind of tier, but there are things that you can do with the actual film, which I'm excited about to talk about because we don't talk a lot about creative on the show, maybe a little bit on WFS Live, our weekly live stream show, but we don't talk about it on the podcast. So what are some things that stick out immediately from a technique standpoint for a low-end filmmaker versus a high-end filmmaker?
I mean, I think low-end filmmakers, the first thing is they poor white balance and exposure throughout the film, which bleeds into, I think, poor use of light, right? So like, you're shooting in this Holiday Inn, right? Which I still sometimes I go to nice weddings and they don't get ready at nice hotels, right? Because they don't care about it. And like, I'm looking at this room and it's orange and messy and bad. And it's like, how am I going to cover this? And like, I have experience, right? So I know how to make somebody look better than the room look better, isolate the subject, shoot shallow depth of field, just a lot of tricks. Because not only do I know how to do it with my camera, but I know that it looks bad. And I think the biggest thing, people talk a lot about technique, Jared. They don't talk a lot about taste. It's like, I've done a lot of leadership over the years, and the number one issue I have with people underneath me is not do they know how to do something, but they don't know that they should do something. And I think that's the biggest thing you see with, I think, inexperienced filmmakers is like that they walk into a room and they're like, this is good. Mm-hmm. You're like, no, this is bad. Mm-hmm. It's like,
and also, so I'm speaking from personal experience because I think for a while I would consider myself a bad filmmaker. I look back and I'm like, why did I make that decision? One thing that I used to do, and I remember one of the first years we were shooting weddings, it might have been like 2011, 2012. I remember shooting wide open. Lights were on in the hotel room, and I was backlighting them with window light, which just like, and I was like, wow, look how the light just wraps around the subject. It's so like light and airy and bright. That's cool. Yeah, all right, I just got to shoot this. And then I was like, maybe a year after, I was like, that is awful looking. Why did I think that was good? It's actually terrible optically, like terrible use of light. Doesn't even show off what's going on. People are just blown out in the background. Highlights, just bad camera technique. And I thought it was like a gimmick, and there are certain gimmicks that work. That was not one of the gimmicks that I would find that work. So I think just a basic understanding of like exactly what you're saying. What looks good from exposures? Look at what photographers are doing. Look what other filmmakers are doing. How they're using light. Turn the lights off when you come into a hotel room. Use natural light. Don't try to use combined light sources.
And part of that is like lack of confidence from the filmmaker too. Like not only do they not know what to do, but even if they know what to do, they either don't know how to get there or they're too insecure to ask.
Yes.
So like you obviously, as you get more experience, you learn how to do that. But
you come into a room and you say, "Hey, you guys are in this darkness. Would you mind just moving the makeup chair or whatever,
or you just say
into the natural light?
I don't care about this shot at all."
Yeah,
you're like, I'm not going to shoot this. It looks dumb.
Yep,
and
awesome.
Like I don't need it. And when I like the shots I need, I'm going to make sure they're in good light.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
like the shots I need, I know what I need, which takes experience. I know how to get it.
Yep.
Versus like I don't even know what I need, so I shoot everything, and a lot of it's bad.
Right. Yeah, something I see immediately the first thing that came to mind was bad white balance. Like,
why
blues,
is this
magentas? Like,
why is this so hard, Jared?
Well, beginners just don't know how to film. There's a lot that you have to do right that I think filmmakers who have been doing it for even 2 years, 3 years, we just take for granted because your camera eventually becomes a part of your body. and you're just like, I know what looks good. I know how to expose this in less than a second, and I'm just going to film it. And that's not necessarily the case for people who are starting out. I think it's actually really hard because you're thinking about what's in front of you. You have to be talking to people that your camera is just like in the way of what your vision is. And so I think it's difficult for people when they first start out, but that's just an experience thing. You just have to get experienced. Hopefully you have experience before you're shooting your first wedding. That would be helpful. But
I mean, everyone starts somewhere, so it's like I'm not telling people like, look at you, you're an idiot.
this is another thing that I think a lot of beginners make in this stage is like they think they have to add a lot of color in post when you really don't. And in the process, they just go in and they start messing things around because they want to have a certain look or like a certain LUT or whatever it is. And then they just make their footage look so janky and weird. Right? Do you see that?
Oversaturated, very huge variation from shot to shot to shot. They never shoot on the same camera system. So you have a bunch of like one good camera and two terrible cameras. Like a lot of stuff like that. That's pretty, yeah. But in general, the overcomplication of color.
A lot of filmmakers, when they're first starting out, they say, oh, if I only got an A7S III, then I would be able to raise my prices. And what they're actually doing is buying a camera that requires maybe a little bit more TLC in the final product. They end up messing up the image in post. It looks flat, washed out, or junky, or oversaturated or whatever. When they really should have just bought like a cheap Fujifilm, XT4 for $1,200, set it to one of the profiles in camera, and it would look way better, a way lower price. Like, stay simple. Like, don't feel like if you're buying a more advanced piece of gear, it's going to have a better outcome. It's actually going to complicate your process the more expensive gear you buy. I've found, right?
Yeah. So I think the other thing I see with these new filmmakers or with a low-end film, because the low-end film is like a combination of the types of things you have at lower cost weddings and the type of people who work those weddings. And that's the thing. It's just like, it's inseparable. You can't separate them. It's like, you're never going to have the best filmmakers shooting these weddings. So you're never going to get to see what they would do with it. So you can say all you want, like, oh, this is what I would do at the wedding. It'd be so great. And we're never going to know, and you're never going to have inexperienced people shooting these super high-end events and proving that actually it was the event and not the filmmaker. So I guess it is what it is, but I do think like the whole point of the beginning of any market is like, it's where everyone gets in. Mm-hmm. So the new filmmaker gets in, the lower budget couples get in, and like, you'll just have these natural things that happen. I think as you go up in price, naturally those weddings are being reduced. So competition is much higher. And I think that's why the quality becomes more important, is like those couples can have the pick of the litter. Mm-hmm. And if you're at the top of the game, you can hire anyone you want. So of course you're going to get great people. The cream rises to the top, But I think like low-end weddings also will have like much more like of a huge variation between like editing styles. Minus like maybe at the top, like the very boutique kind of wedding films that are very niche and maybe considered high end, like a Bottle Brush or something like that, or a Little Long Distance, or maybe a Blink, where they're doing like high buy-in, very couple-centric films that require a certain kind of person and a certain type. I would consider those borderline, not even wedding industry films. They're very much like filmmaker-y, and it's all about that person's brand. Most of us are just in the wedding industry, right? And so these people are shooting, like, they're just shooting the events that are happening at that end of the market. And I do wonder, like, I wonder where that line is between like somebody like choosing to shoot more like the weddings that they want to get into, or getting lucky and getting a wedding that lets them shoot the way that they want to shoot to go up. Because like, as you get into the better market, right? Better florals, better photographers, which means better sessions, but ideally, better schedules, like how many times have you heard people in like a wedding filmmaking group say something like, oh, the wedding party was 2 hours late. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, has that ever happened? Barely. I can think of a couple weird times.
A couple weird times. One time, not to go off too much of a tangent, but the bus broke down. It wasn't on purpose though. It wasn't like, oh, the makeup went 2 hours late.
I remember that guy's the groom's mother fell down.
Yes.
Injured herself, so that caused a delay. But we're not having like the stuff that people are talking about, these problems they're having at the weddings they're having. We're not experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine what I would have to do to make a film like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't even have to experience that anymore.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, if you're just dealing with certain things, like, how do you break away?
How do you deal with some of those problems, maybe?
Well, and how do you make your films not marked by that low-endness?
So what I've done with Merriment Films is, and I think this is a fair way to do it. I noticed in this kind of lower end market, people are still delivering a lot of, longer films. Like, we kind of just went against the grain, and it's actually worked out really well.
Yeah.
I'm doing a shorter film. I'm doing a 3 to 4 minute film instead of with Stop Go Love. I'm doing a 5 to 6 minute film.
Well,
So
a lot of
one
our
song
competitors
versus
at
two
that
songs.
market are doing like 12-minute films.
Sure. Yeah. And we just went against the grain because I'm like, hey, if I'm going to charge less, I'm doing less work because that just makes sense, right? But I think a lot of people in this field, it's way more competitive and cutthroat. So you having to offer more for less money, right? But that's something that we did. That's a decision that we made. It might hurt us, but I think the quality in our, this tier is the thing that sets us apart. And that's kind of what our trump card is at the end of the day. Other practical things, like I think adding much more a la carte options, offering actually less upfront, actually makes more sense for us in this world, and selling really heavy a la carte items is something that's kind of worked out well, actually. Instead of doing like with Stop Go Love, I'm like, we're just pretty much there all day. We'll be up there for up to 10 hours of coverage. With Merriment, I say anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, and then we add hours, for an hourly rate if they want 9 or 10 hours. That's something they can do, but they have to add it on, So kind of just, I see it as like a budget airline, right? So like you go with Breeze Airlines, they're going to charge you for the bag. They're going to charge you for you to select the seat. They're going to charge you for everything, like $12 soda, everything. In order to have a sustainable business in this world, I think you have to do it the same way as Breeze Airlines.
Yeah, well, it's much more of an emotional purchase at that end of the market too. You have to realize that. So like in your filmmaking, in your sales, all of that is like, there's a lot more riding on this to that customer than there is to the higher end customer. Like, no one is more critical of your films than someone at the beginning of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because to them, that $2,000 might as well been $30,000 in their mentality,
mm-hmm.
versus a person who drops 15, like, who might just be like, how much did I pay for that again?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, oh, that's a good film. Like, they're not even thinking about the money when they get the film. They're just watching the film. They're like, oh, this is great. Good job. You're one of the people that I paid $15,000 that also did a good job at my wedding. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, that person's making a very emotional decision. And I think it does affect the films because the films need to make sure that person is happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing I see about low-end films is you can tell either that someone just is making the weirdest thing. I've seen some weird films at the bottom of the market. Someone trying to differentiate themselves and like, it's just like, this is tacky and bad. But mostly what I see is people who are just trying to make the couple happy because they're afraid of the couple. And like, so like, for instance, they go like, this is a low-end film thing. Processional happens.
Mm-hmm.
In your edit, it goes, mom and dad, or mom and whoever walked mom down the aisle. This bridesmaid, next bridesmaid, next bridesmaid, another bridesmaid. And then I'm like, why did you put that in there? Like, well, like, they need to see everyone.
If they don't see everyone, they're going to say, why did you not include my sister walking down the aisle?
And they might. I don't know. They might say that.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one has ever said that to us. Now, they do say, can you include these people in the films? But nobody has ever said, like, you missed all the important moments, like my sister walking down the aisle. with Stop Go Love
Yes.
or Huxley Film. I don't think it's ever said to us at all, I guess.
No,
but
no, they haven't.
I've heard stories though
Mhm.
in other parts of the market. It's like you're much more likely going to have that. So the films are really shaped by that. They're shaped by like this relationship with the customer and like the customer's expectations. And I do think at some point, if you really want to get out of that market, like I don't think you should make films for those people.
Mm.
I think you need to take a risk and make a film for the next market.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You're making the film for the next film that you're going to create, or that you want to create. And, I think there's also a tier to this. Like, I don't think that you can totally sell someone on one thing and just, like pull it out from underneath them and
has to
say,
be what
I'm
you
doing
market.
something different now. Like, you have to produce what you market. So it has to be like a slow, incremental kind of change. You can't just create this avant-garde thing and you're like, this is what I'm making now, deal with it. Because then they'll give you bad reviews and you might not work again.
I mean, really what we're talking about is what should someone do
Mhm.
to create an upwardly mobile brand?
Yes.
And like, if you want an upwardly mobile brand, you need to not make a film that only poor people want to watch.
Mhm.
You have to understand, no offense, poor people, but
I'm
you're not,
one of them.
well, no,
by
you're
the
not
way.
paying my bills either. So
Yeah.
like, I'm not worried about you.
Yeah.
It's like, I have to, in order for me to make a living, I have to make wealthy people happy.
Mhm.
It's not that I'm a wealthy person. It's just, I'm one of their servants. And, and, it's like at the end of the day, you have to understand what they value. And so if your brand, every time you go up in the market, you have to change the film you're making dramatically.
Yeah.
You're not running an upwardly mobile brand.
Yeah. And I think there's actually a way to do this that I've seen people do, like deliver the client film and then make the film for the website that you want. Like if they want everyone in their bridal party walking down the aisle, to just do it and deliver it to them. And then the film that you put on your website, on Instagram, whatever, cut that part to B-roll a little bit more. Make it a little bit more acceptable for your next client. Like
But
that
also-
would be an easy way to do it.
Say one couple said, why didn't you put my sister in? I would put their sister in. Even if I didn't like it, I would do it because that's customer service and I want them to go away. What I'm not going to do is from now on, always put the sister in because one time this one customer got mad at me. And I see so many people make this mistake. Every time they had a bad interaction with the customer, you could tell their films and brand is built around the bad experience they've had with couples. So everything that's ever made someone unhappy, they implement it.
Yes.
And you're like, but it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, but this one person. I'm like, that doesn't mean everyone
Yeah.
is like, stick to your guns.
Hopefully this is a really important take that someone can take away from, because I think that's so true. Like you're running scared. You're not creating the best possible film.
You're the expert. You're supposed to know.
Yep. Totally. So,
And
yeah.
like, that's what you see with all the people with upwardly mobile brands is the brand has its own identity and it travels as they grow in their brand. Like LaRev didn't start shooting luxury weddings. They started shooting you could talk to them about it, like endless beginning country club weddings. And yet they were still somehow to take some of the things they did and bring them up with them. And like, I'm sure they've adjusted and changed, but I'm sure the core of who they are and their values around the filmmaking and even some components of what they do to make the films have persisted. And I think that's what you got to look at is like, so I guess my question is like, let's just talk about like, those are the components. I think we've talked a lot about the beginning of the market because I think it's the one part that is the most, it's the largest group of people.
And even people at the high end have been there before in most cases.
But I think like the part of the market that I think is most of our audience and the part where you like is kind of no man's land is that upper mid-tier market, that $5,000 to $8,000 price point, right? What are the things when you watch a wedding film that that you think those films have in common that maybe are different than the low end and maybe different than the ultra luxury?
Yeah, I think well, we were just talking about it. The first look is one of them, right? The first look is where we see a lot of that happen, maybe in that middle tier. And it's not as a big deal in the high end market. Not in a tacky way. Like, I think there's a little bit more tackiness that goes on in the lower end market,
Well,
but just the first look in general
the
happens a
first
lot in
look
that.
in the low end market is a very emotional moment.
Mhm.
What we experience with first looks on a week, saw Jake and Nate from Runaway Vows talking about this. Oh, I love first looks. It's so emotional. And I'm like, what? Because my take on their thing was, I don't like first looks because they're not emotional at all for me. Like literally it's like, well, you look great, honey. Like, because the reason they're doing a first look is for schedule reasons.
Mhm. Yep.
Like, they're doing a first look because it allows them to get all their family portraits done earlier in the day and so that the party goes smoother.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say so you can get more drinks in before the reception.
Yeah, and they don't have to. It's like a logistical nightmare because these are large weddings. You're having to like carve out 40 people out of 240 people, and logistically, it's just a lot easier. That's my experience with them. That's been most of my experience with first looks as a wedding filmmaker. Like, I don't have a lot of these brides who are like, or grooms who they don't say anything romantic to each other. We don't even record them. Sometimes we do.
We don't record the first looks.
We don't record the audio.
Oh, yeah,
Like, because no one says anything.
yeah, and I would say a quarter of them are like, "What do we do now?" You're just like, "Oh, they're just doing this because someone told them it would make sense schedule wise."
Yes.
Um,
That's more the high end market. And like every once in a while you'll see like this really dramatic and emotional first look, and they're not it's not like they're robots, they're happy.
Mhm.
But it's just like I don't know why. I'm not in that tier of
Yeah.
human. So
I would say this middle tier market, middle tier to upper, high end, middle tier to high end, right? I think it's probably the most well-oiled machine.
yes.
It's the most boilerplate, time-stamped, like this is what's going on. It's this way every time. You're a lot of times going to work with high-end country clubs to wedding venue, and they have it dialed, bro. Like they are just going to be like, this is happening at this time. This is happening at this time. So unfortunately, that probably means there's not going to be a lot of like super unique things happening.
Yeah, the schedule is like really
Rigid.
like and across the industry.
Yeah.
You shoot 4 weddings in 4 weekends and you're within that market, almost all of them are going to have the same
Schedule.
flow.
Completely. But when you are in the lower end market, it's all over the place because nothing's being controlled. In the high end market, it's all about having different experiences. And I think the planners, and they're putting a lot of effort into creating something super unique. So the timeline can be totally different. They are willing to take some risks and do some different things just to give people a different experience.
Definitely more customized.
Yeah.
Like,
But the problem for us as filmmakers at that point, when everything is just templated, boilerplate, schedule, everything, is how do you make a unique film that's different when people are just, on the course, right?
I think this is why people who are in this part of the market always gravitate towards like interviews and story driven things, because like there's nothing on the day that gives them inspiration or even the ability to do something super unique. And like we're lucky because florals are big in our region, even in like country club weddings. I was looking at a wedding the other day at a country club and I was like, those florals are nice. It's a nice looking room. Like, this looks great. This is a great looking wedding. This wedding would be a great portfolio piece for someone. But like, I think you start to see the sameness though, and it does maybe affect the quality of people's work.
Yeah. And that's hard to break out of because a lot of filmmakers are just working with the ingredients that they're given, right? So what would you say are some things that could separate the work itself, technique, whatever, from the high end market? What would drive them to that higher end market?
High end or luxury?
Luxury. Let's say, because that's where most people want to be.
Yeah, I think like everyone should implement luxury elements in their films, even if they're not shooting luxury. And like luxury is all about being aware of when I look at luxury, I think like a great luxury wedding filmmaker is telling the story of this great experience people are having. And it is encompassing the people, the romance, the fashion, the food, the location, the design, like it's like pulling it all together into this 360 thing. So the thing I would tell people is think 360 and don't just shoot spaces. Like my opinion is you should shoot every single reception hall as if it's docked out with the best florals ever.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think
Don't wait till you get that.
texture shots,
Yes.
right? That's a big differentiator. People that are able to shoot things that are standing still really well is a big indicator of luxury. Because when you get into luxury, that's half your film is just texture shots. Like give the film a feel, right?
I mean, I had a wedding photographer in the luxury space, and they were like, "Listen, all it is to do luxury is location, beautiful people, show beautiful people, show locations, and give a person a sense of experience when they watch the film. Like, and so lean into that. Like, and like, don't lose your identity. Like, I don't see why doing that would keep you from telling a good story or doing an interview, doing things that like normal folks who are your clients would also like. But I think it'll give you the skills that when you get, if you ever get, the amount of times I've seen some wedding filmmakers who get a wedding that's borderline like high end. And if they shot it right, it could look really high end and nice. And it would show a luxury person that they know how to cover events like this. And then the way they cover it is like, they don't shoot hardly any details. They don't light the dances. They don't shoot the reception space well. The location shooting is bad. It's literally just, they shoot it exactly the same way they shot weddings that had no florals and no design elements. And it's like, I think that's a big mistake people make. And like, they just, because they don't develop that skill of what is expected, and you can like scoff at that crap all you want. I think it's stupid to scoff at that and be like, oh, that's not about the couple. That's about the wedding planner. It's like, I think you're so wrong if you think that, because it's like the couple's money bought that. You think the couple is going to buy flowers they don't like? That don't represent them? That aren't important to them? You think like they're just like, oh, I don't care about these flowers I bought. All I care about is you, wedding filmmaker. And all I care about is my love of my life across from me. It's like, no, they like all of it.
Yeah. Here's a good question, if I do say so myself. Product-wise, what are some things that differentiate luxury and maybe high end? And also, we can even dip down into the lower tier. What are some actual products that vary that you see more in one market versus
Like
the other?
deliverables?
Yeah, deliverables.
I think like luxury wedding filmmakers I had a luxury wedding filmmaker tell me the other day, I don't care about the highlight film. All I care about is social. They're like, oh, anyone can do it. Like luxury wedding filmmakers are way less concerned with the actual film that they're making and way more concerned with the way that they're marketing that wedding.
The branding piece.
Yes.
Yep.
You can like it or not like it. I think
So do you find that a majority of luxury filmmakers are providing social reel?
oh yeah, you have to. And I think it's like, even someone like who's as pure as like Sculpting with Time, who does really care about the films that they're making and are trying to do, like, they have no reason that they have to keep pushing the envelope, but he just keeps doing it.
Yeah.
Like,
Has Alex ever done a vertical reel?
I don't think he has. Not that I can remember. I mean, maybe they have.
I get that he is just such a purist.
He's a purist.
Yeah.
And like, even then, they're doing all the same crap though. Like, they're dealing with couples where they're like, I need this, and this out of you. And like, I need this by the next day. I need a documentary of me. I need this. I need that. Like, they're dealing with the same stuff, but also trying to make this artistic product. I think we try to do the same thing with Huxley Film, is like, I'm not just going to make this soulless thing because that's for me. That's for me to get personal artistic enjoyment. And I do believe like if I can make something unique, that will make it easier for me to sell to the right couples. But I also know I couldn't get away with just not doing all the same basic stuff you do at the high-end market. You got to do all that stuff. Like, otherwise it's like, what good am I to the team?
Right. A big difference that I see is like low tier weddings have hour-long doc edits. You don't see an hour-long wedding doc in the middle tier often anymore. You don't see it in luxury space at all.
Not really.
Right? Like,
You might see like that 12 to 15 minute, maybe 20-minute edit.
yeah,
You'll
yeah,
see some of that.
different.
Because they're like 4-day events.
Right. You can put something together in 12 to 20 minutes potentially. That's awesome, by the way. But when you're just shooting for 6 hours at, some barn in, Oklahoma.
It's weird how that works, right? Like the
Yeah.
worse the coverage, the more content they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, those are some things that stand out. Any more things that stand out? Let me ask you this. When do you need a second shooter? When do you need a third shooter?
I mean, I think everyone should build their business around having a second shooter. When you need one, you need them at like the high end market. Like the schedules require it. If you're constant, this is what I'll tell you. If you're constantly, with a few exceptions, able to cover all your events by yourself, I don't think you're doing that many high-end weddings. Because logistically, all the ones that I've been at them before, and it's like me and you and an assistant, and I'm like, I need one more person.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of places you have to be, the concurrencies that are happening, how quick you have to be. Everything is about this. Like, you have to be so fast. You have no time. And so like oftentimes there's either someone who needs to be like ahead of you, getting set up for the next thing while you're covering. Luxury and high-end weddings, you are setting up and shooting content at the same time very often. Because that's how the schedule work. And the planner expects you to be like, you ready to go? They're not going to be like, nobody is going to accept, well, you scheduled this thing all the way up into this thing, so you got to give me time to set up. They're like, no, I don't. Why should I have to? I told you what it was going to be. You're supposed to figure it out. And that's the expectation. Right. So I think like, I don't really see, I could shoot solo weddings by myself all the way until it becomes too logistically challenging. And I think it becomes too logistically challenging at a lot of these, especially inner city high-end events.
Yeah. I think it does matter the how much they're spending, because how much they're spending indicates probably how much they're receiving, the quality, all that kind of stuff. So, it varies depending on the quality, but also just like logistics. Like, we'll do Merriment Films. Merriment Films is only one videographer, no assistant. Stop Go Love is a combination of lead shooter and assistant, and lead shooter and second shooter. And then Huxley is almost always going to be 3 to 4 people. I wouldn't even rule out a 5th person on some weddings,
I've been around high-end luxury events on the editing side and had information about like how these things are staffed. Many of these have the most shooters ever. Like these high-end events, 4, 5, 6 shooters is not uncommon.
Yep.
Like not high-end, luxury. Like the complexity of the luxury market. You could talk all you want about like, oh yeah, it's so easy. Look how hot that girl is and all the florals they have. You could never do it, dude. You literally can't even handle the logistics of a basic barn wedding. Like this is a whole other level.
Sounds like you're talking to someone very specifically in the audience.
I'm not actually. I've just heard it a lot, and I can tell that the person's never been in the space. They've never been in the room. Right. They don't even know what they're saying.
Let me ask you this, because I've always wondered if you've ever heard of somebody doing this. You mentioned before, that photographer that said it's all about beautiful locations, beautiful people. Do you think people in the luxury space like take photos or do like stalking of their couples beforehand? If you're doing 5 to 10 weddings a year, are you like, well, send a profile picture before I decide to accept this?
I don't know.
If that's what one of the criteria is, and that's important to you, like, how do you get that? There's no other way in my mind outside of stalking them and saying like, oh no, sorry, we're booked.
Well, so I think it depends on where you live. Like if you live in Southern California with a lot of new money, like there's a lot more young, rich people who are upperly mobile in New York City and Southern California than Maine.
So your odds are higher.
Yes.
May the odds be in your favor in California.
Probably a lot of the high-end weddings are going to be very beautiful people in California. So I think depending on where you live, you're going to have, it becomes easier.
Did you say the difference between California and Maine?
Yeah, if you're up in Maine,
Good luck.
you're not going to have a bunch of rich 24-year-olds. What industries are there for them to become rich in?
Right, right.
Everyone who's rich there is old.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, unless like maybe there's like a bunch of weed millionaires or something. But like up in like California, there's all these like HR reps for freaking Silicon Valley and people who are like influencers and people just who are like that new money wave is on the West Coast, right? And so like the events you're doing are going to be different. You're in Miami, you're going to have like some Instagram model marrying a 54-year-old executive. Like depending on where you live, it just depends on what they consider to be luxury too. Like I said it before on the show, like a planner told me the perfect budget for New England rich people is $999,999 because they don't want to be the family that spent $1 million on the wedding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's a very New England thing, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's like so like yeah, you might want to get all these hot people and do all this stuff, but like they might not be getting married. So it's like I do think like hotness travels. So you get if I was doing.
We've never done this, by the way. I mean, we shoot a lot of weddings, and we've never dove in. But I can only assume that people are doing this in this luxury market if that's one of their criteria.
Well, I think it's more about like what you show in the film.
Sure, but if you're a luxury person, you're not doing 20 weddings a year. You're doing 10 or 15. I'm assuming you want a higher ratio. So, like,
I would
your
say
chances
like,
are much lower. You're
like-
not going to put only 5 weddings that you did up on Instagram every year.
but I think you could always find beautiful people and luxurious things. Like you're not going to have these like dumpy looking people. They're all going to be well dressed. But it's like when you show cocktail hour, show the hot people on your social. You don't show grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you make the film for the couple, you show grandma. But when you make the social media thing, you show all their hot friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the tactic. It's like, what are you trying to you're trying to communicate? Like, guys, this is like basic lizard brain stuff. Like people want to be adjacent to success and youth.
This is Hollywood, baby.
People want to, even if they are not young, they don't want to think about the fact that they are dying and becoming old. They want to feel sexy and be around sexiness. Like, and if you refuse to scratch that itch, they will go elsewhere. Like, it's just how it goes. And it's like, we don't have an overtly sexual brand or anything like that, but we definitely care about fashion and care how people look. Like, I wouldn't put someone in one of my films, especially on social, who didn't look great. And every once in a while, I catch someone, I'm like, don't put that person in there. Look at how they're dressed. Like, am I being superficial?
No, unfortunately, I think it's just the way the world works, and we're in an image-driven society. So it's society and industry. So it's like, I don't know. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That's it.
It's even like, oh, this is a big thing. Low end to high end. Bride's getting ready. Don't put that in high end wedding films.
Ray does it.
Maybe because Ray's old school, man. Like Ray, and I will say this, he kind of does.
Right.
It's not
Come over to the window,
It's
makeup artist, bring your one brush, and
It's like-
pretend. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the same way that they would be portrayed in their Instagram account,
Yes.
right? It's like it's still the same rules. Is my point. Like, low end market wants like everything about my day. It was so special to me. High end market, I would never go out looking like that. Do not put that in my film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you're not. That's just how it is.
Yep. Image is going to be much more important to your bride, to your groom, in that high.
And it is more important.
Yep.
Like
Has to be.
they make more money on their face than a mechanic. Like their personal brand is more valuable than the personal brand of a couple getting married in a VFW hall. And more is at stake.
No.
They could literally make money by having that party. Like Oh, come to my wedding, fly in from Tokyo. Let's do this. Oh, so great. Oh, listen, after this wedding, we got to reconnect on that deal. Like that stuff is happening at these events.
Yes.
It's not happening at low-end weddings.
Can I use your tractor on Friday?
Yeah. Or it's just like literally like, by the way, I'm not saying this is good.
Yeah.
As a human being, I resonate with the disgustingness of what I'm talking about. I resonate with the idea that human beings should be all about the love and romance of the families. And I wish in some ways that was true.
Yeah. If you want proof, just, we should have invited you to our weddings because they were very much like, there were plenty of mechanics at my wedding. If say that.
Yes. But I'm just telling you as I run a business, how I do it.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
That's all. And like, I also know like, if you're getting to not discourage you about going up, like that you're not going to see human love and stuff, you really will. The people are amazing. A lot of these people are incredible. It's just like there's just more going on.
Yeah. A couple of people that have really like just blasted off in the couple of years, had this meteoric rise. Peyton Frank. What do you think someone like Peyton Frank does in the high level market that someone in the lower tier doesn't do?
Peyton Frank, look at her own work. I was looking the other day. When she first started, it was all editorial. It was like just female beauty.
Yep.
I'm not sure if she consciously did that or what the deal was, but at some point in her content, it became all about location. And I think it's because she made a decision that she wants only destination. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but like,
well,
because
that's kind of like luxury to luxury. I'm saying like lower tier.
I'm not sure you can do like
to higher tier.
The thing about Peyton's she's good, but she also got so lucky. So I can't really say towards like that anyone should do what she did because I mean, people should be as bold as she is. They should have as good taste as she does. Like they should, that's what you should copy from her is like, she knows what looks expensive. Like a lot of her original content was essentially just styled shoots, and yeah, I mean, she got lucky getting on some shoots with like a KT Mary and someone like that, but did she really? I mean, she made it happen. So it's like, it's tough to learn from that because it's like, that's this unique convergence of like opportunity and skill that she had.
Right.
And then as she developed,
she has a great taste.
Yes.
She knows style. She knows fashion. When we had her on the podcast, it was all about like, oh, this bride was wearing this certain dress. She was in the know. So like a filmmaker that's doing high-end weddings has some level. It could be fashion. It could be location. It could be knowing about hotels. But you have some level of like, I'm in the know.
You have
I know
to
the way these people live.
Yeah, like if you don't know that Beholden is not as good of a brand as Ramona Cavazza, you're not ready.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you don't
that's my Peyton Frank takeaway.
Yeah, well. If you don't know that that the black tux or even Indochino is actually a cheap tuxedo.
Say that too loud.
Then you're not ready.
Yeah.
Like that's not a Tom Ford. Like that's not a $10,000 tuxedo. That's a $400 tuxedo. By the way, if you go to Engage, everyone at the event is going to be wearing an Indochino tuxedo, right? We're not like they're like, I'm wearing it one time, like it's not that all these people are just only wearing Tom Ford and you're going to show up and you better be wearing Tom Ford yourself. It's understanding the brand languages and understanding the taste of the people you're trying. I think that is hopefully the takeaway is this across all markets. Have an upwardly mobile brand. So you have to, no matter what you're shooting, if you want to get to the next level, you have to be able to communicate to the next level. And if your films don't communicate to that level, if that audience looks at you and says, you don't understand me, you're not going to be able to do it. But I think at the end of the day too, it's like, what can you control? You can control your knowledge. Like you can control how you present yourself and what you choose to emphasize. Or maybe you have a Beholden dress, and there's nothing wrong with a Beholden dress. They are a great company.
They revolutionized a certain part of the industry. I'm very grateful they exist.
Yeah, and they're beautiful dresses.
Beautiful. Yep.
And a lot of brides look incredible in them. But like, if you go like, hey, that dress this year is a copy of the, Oscar de la Renta. Or remember a couple years ago, when Vera Wang was doing the blush,
Mhm.
all those pink dresses, like that was a Vera Wang thing. And then they worked its way down into the lower market.
Yeah.
Right?
Devil Wears Prada, man. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
She's like, not Devil Wears Prada expert, but she's like, your blue sweater is derivative of this, which was derivative of this 2009 line, whatever. Like, that's the world you're living in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So either your bride's showing up and she got on trend dress, or it's a 5-year-old trend that makes your films look dated.
Mhm.
It's like, you have to know that.
Yeah.
It's not your bride's problem. She might like that. I saw some off-white dresses this year. I haven't seen a pink dress in years.
Mhm.
If I see a pink dress, I'm going to be like, it's kind of dated looking.
Yeah.
Right.
I live in that world right now where I'm somewhat exposed to luxury and understand some of it. Like, I like a Tom Ford tuxedo, man. Those things are sick. Pair of Gucci shoes. Shout out Kyle Smith. But I'll go to, I get dragged to Marshall's a lot with my wife. And is it Marshalls or TJ Maxx? They have like the
both.
But I think only TJ Maxx has the Gucci sweaters and whatever every once in a while. They have like the stylish thing. And I'm always
or like a Nordstrom rack.
I want to go look at these expensive things. I'm like, ooh, I could get a, YSL or purse for Sammy for $800.
Sunglasses, man.
$4,000.
That sunglasses market, those things are hot for like 30 days.
Right.
So you can get like $1,000 sunglasses for like $200. You want to just look fake luxury? Sunglasses are the way to go.
But I don't know the difference between the years. Yeah. But I understand, the brands. But that's a level of fashion. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever.
Well, that's the whole thing about. It's like watches.
Yeah.
It's like a luxury watches is all about, do you know that this is good?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that luxury watches are stupid in my opinion. Like, I don't understand it at all. Like, in terms of like, why is this worth money? Except for the fact that rich people like having things that they know that others don't. And that's important. It's like, oh, this is a Submariner. Oh, that's not a real Submariner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's a derivative of a Submariner.
It's a Tudor. Ugh.
Yeah, and it's like this person's like, and if you can express, if you can have that kind of like wink, wink, nod, nod, I get you in your wedding films. Like if you go to a groom like, whoa, is that a Submariner? Can I get some of that?
Mm-hmm.
And you put that in your film, that next groom, like there are little moments like that throughout your weddings.
Yeah.
Where you can.
And they might even buy a watch because they know that you film it well and be like, oh, I need to show off a little bit. I want to have something a little sparky.
If you're just like can't speak their language in every market, this is all markets. You want to shoot. Why is it not every Indian wedding, but like often that like whatever the Indian wedding is, are going to be like, have you done weddings like this before? Have you done this? Have you done that? Every market's like, do you understand me?
Do you understand the secret language?
Do you understand the secret language? And it's like, if you want to be upward mobile with your brand, you want to get stuck. Maybe that's what we should have called the episode, How to Not Be Stuck. Is like, you have to learn to speak the next market's language. If I want to go to Florida, even with Stop Go Love, new language. Florida couples, different than New England couples.
Yep.
The film is still good, but I need to figure out how to speak their language. And it's like, so I guess Filmmaker, like, who you selling to? That's it.
Yep. And that's probably a good way to wrap up the episode, because that's a great question to ask. Guys, thank you for listening thus far. If you made it this far, make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, the Wedding Film School Show, and Wedding Film School, the OG channel. Have a lot of YouTube content there, as well as on our Facebook channel, our Facebook group. That's where you can interact yourself and ask questions and just be surrounded by the best wedding filmmaker community in the world. And you can learn about what do you call it, Jay? Reptile brain, and other like
lizard
subjects. Lizard brain. But hope you guys have a good rest of your day, guys. We'll see you next time here on the Wedding Film School Show.